Hi, it's Victor Cheng from SaaSCEO.com. Today, I'll be talking about direct distribution or sales channels for SaaS businesses. Just as a reminder, there are two different categories of distribution channels, direct and indirect. A direct sales or distribution channel involves selling directly to a customer, and when you charge them, it is your company name on their credit card statement or on the invoice in which they are paying. There are no third-party intermediaries involved in that process. So let's talk about the three different direct distribution channels that are available to you as a SaaS business. I'm going to start with the simplest to implement, which is typically appropriate for the lowest price point products, and then we'll end on the most expensive, more complicated direct distribution channels at the end. So the simplest way, particularly for low price point products, is to use e-commerce or self-service distribution. The way that model works is you drive traffic from online advertising, PR, social media, paid advertising to a website. The customer comes to the website, looks at content, text, video, white papers, learns more about your offering, and then decides to buy, and they conduct the transaction entirely on the website. Click, checkout, boom. They now have access to your software. So that's a classic e-commerce self-service based approach. It's typically appropriate when price points for your offerings are under $1,000 per year, as it's a price point that buyers feel comfortable buying without talking to a live person in that process. So that's your first option, e-commerce self-service. Your second direct sales or distribution channel option is the phone-based sales force. Now, I use that term phone-based a bit loosely. A lot of sales are done via email, LinkedIn message, video conferencing of all types. But that role started originally when none of those technologies existed, except for email. And so now we kind of use phone-based Salesforce sort of as a label to describe this idea of your salespeople in a central location using technology to communicate virtually to have interactions with potential customers, right? So a phone-based Salesforce is really appropriate for sales sort of in the 1,000 plus per year range, really up to around 100,000 in annual contract value. What is really nice about that Salesforce is you can do interactions with customers and potential buyers. You can do a discovery call to assess their needs. You can match their needs to one or more product offerings. You can differentiate your offerings relative to competitors in a live dialogue. You can hear the objections and respond to those objections. Right now, obviously, the downside is it's more expensive. Right, having high-priced labor involved in the sales process drives up the labor cost. This is why the annual contract value of your software offering is a very important determinant on whether you can afford a phone-based sales force. If your customers spend $10 a year, you can't have a phone-based sales force, right? It's all self-service, maybe some bots and some automation. If your customers are spending $50,000 a year, you can absolutely afford the economics of a phone-based sales force. So that's sort of that middle option. So we talked about e-commerce self-service as our first option. We talked about a phone-based sales force as our second option. The third and final option is a field-based sales force, where the salespeople are not in a central location. They're in cars and on airplanes, driving and traveling to a customer to meet them in person in their offices to talk about their product offerings and the problems and solutions they have to offer. What a field-based sales force is very good at is developing a high trust relationship with a potential buyer. When you are offering a service offering that's $100,000 a year up to several $1 million a year in terms of annual contract value, people do not like to bet their careers on buying from such a high price point without meeting somebody in person first. Before I got into this kind of work, many, many decades ago, I was a professional IT buyer for about a year. And I had $1 million to spend, right, to buy various SaaS technologies. And it's really stressful as a buyer because I know if I make the wrong decision, my company suffers. And in all likelihood, I get fired, right? So at that kind of spending level, you really want to meet people face to face. And the sale is as much about the technology as it is about the people, right? Because once I cut that PO to pay that invoice, will you still be there if I have a problem? That's the question in the back of everyone's mind, particularly for those very large, high price point purchases. And with a field-based sales force where they're meeting in person, like what they show up, right? You look them across eye to eye, and you can say, oh, I think I trust this person. And when you have requests, they respond to them. So it's a great way to develop a deeper relationship, a higher trust relationship. But it's very expensive. Field-based salespeople can easily be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars in compensation, in addition to bonuses and incentive compensation. So they're very expensive. Super effective, but very expensive. So it's only appropriate for the higher priced annual contract value types of offerings. So the right approach in your business depends an awful lot on your economics. What is the price point of your offering? What is your lifetime value? And can you afford the costs of these different channels? So e-commerce, least expensive, least effective within these areas. Enterprise, field-based sales forces that go call on Fortune 500 clients, super effective, can answer all kinds of objections, but really expensive. So the right fit's often determined by the price point of your offering and the sophistication level of your customers. Consumers tend to be more e-commerce self-service, and Fortune 500 buyers tend to be field-based sales forces. Hopefully that gives you a rough idea of the options available to you and how to pick amongst them. If you have any questions, feel free to post a question underneath this video. I'll be happy to answer it. And don't forget to subscribe to this particular video and check out my blog at saasceo.com. Thanks everyone and have a great day.